Welcome to People I Know Show, a podcast about interesting people, personal growth, and being wrong. I'm your host, Curt Karstensen. Joining me today is Terry Lee. Terry and I both pursued radio broadcasting while studying at St. Cloud State University about 13 or 14 years ago. In the last year, Terry pursued his political ambitions by running for public office in the state of Wisconsin. That's mainly the focus of our conversation today, but we get into other topics of interest as well. And if you notice a different sound quality today than most episodes, that's because this is the first time I've tried having a conversation with a guest recorded over Skype. Please take a few moments to leave a rating and a review of People I Know Show on Apple Podcasts or wherever you might be listening. You can always search for and follow People I Know Show on Facebook or Instagram. There you'll find photos and other content related to the show. There is now another listening option. All episodes are uploaded to YouTube, audio only, but you can listen there and see other videos that I'll be posting from time to time. Again, to find that, just search for People I Know Show. Now, let's get into today's conversation with Terry Lee. I'd like to welcome Terry Lee to the People I Know Show podcast today. Hello, Terry.
Hello, Curt. Hello.
And Terry, super accommodating. This is the first time that I have attempted to record a podcast without someone sitting next to me. And this came together within like a half hour. And so I don't know what that says about you, both that you're willing to step up and also maybe you don't got a lot going on. I'm not sure.
Actually, you were actually very fortunate today because I took a half day at work because I have to work a Saturday shift and they don't let you have overtime. So it worked out great. You actually contacted me while I was getting my haircut. And then later on today, I'm going to the dentist. So it was a very jam-packed half day. And now it's even more jam-packed.
From what I can tell, your hair looks very good from the small image of you on the screen right now.
Well, thank you. My partner, Jen, she cuts my own hair and she never doesn't let anybody else do it. So
that's awesome. Okay, so a few reasons to talk to you as People I Know Show. I like to have people from all parts of my life that have influenced me or inspired me in some way, impacted me in some way, and we haven't seen each other in a long time. I was looking back. I saw a message that we must have seen each other. The last time was 2011 when I was in Green Bay for work. I can't even specifically remember what we did. It does sound familiar.
The Bullfrogs?
Yeah, I was working
you were with the Northwoods League.
With the Northwoods League, and I came into town probably to see a Bullfrogs game.
Yeah.
And we got together. I can't even specifically remember if you came to the ballpark or we went out, but...
No, I just happened to actually be at the ballpark, I think. And we just ran into each other.
Okay.
It was nothing timed or anything like that. And I think you had business to attend to, and I don't think we could grab a drink or anything like that. But, I've always admired all of your work, your voice, and your talent. I think has always been the thing that has always impressed me, and I've always had you on that pedestal. Even when I was back in college, you always seemed to be right on top of things. That's how I remember you.
Okay, well, thank you, Terry. I don't know that I always look at myself that way, but I'm glad that you do. And I guess how we got to know each other initially then is through the radio broadcast program and the KVSC campus radio station at St. Cloud State University.
Yeah,
and did you graduate spring of 2006 also?
No, you may have graduated just before me. I graduated in 2007.
But we ended up being in a lot of the same classes, and we worked together on one project, I recall. And I was looking through, because I like to have a photo with everyone for my podcast page. I can't find a photo with us together. I have a photo that I took of you at KVSC and UTVS at St. Cloud State to do an annual trivia weekend. And at 2008 might have been the previous time that I'd seen you. After trivia 2008, a bunch of us were out partying for the post-trivia outing.
Yeah.
So I see that. So this may be the first episode of People I Know Show where I don't have a photo with the person, but we'll have to get together at some point. But you live in Green Bay and have for some time, so kind of explain what you've been doing there in the last, I don't know how many years it's been.
Well, after graduating college, I spent a couple of years and worked for a couple of the local radio stations in town there as a news reporter. I started my career there, and then I ended up moving to Green Bay back in spring of 2011. And I ran into you that summer, actually. So I worked, here in Green Bay as a local news reporter for a few years after that. And a few years ago now, I actually had to step away because being in news is demanding, and it's second shifts and weekends and stuff like that, depending on the position. And I had kids coming and had kids, and it just didn't work out that way. And I needed to do some more, and I didn't want to move around the country like a lot of media people have to do to kind of get that raise and that up in their career.
So you moved to Green Bay for a radio job, and then as things transpired, you decided you'd choose Green Bay over radio and have continued to stay there.
Yeah, started a family here. I met a beautiful, great lady, Jennifer Halfman. We've been together for several years now, and we had twins together, and I'm helping to, we have a family here in Green Bay, and I've established a lot of connections here, and, just kind of continuing to live life because it's a great community here. It really is.
I think the thing that I've noticed about you from a distance lately that we can get into talking about now is you putting yourself out there in a brand new way. Just last fall, prior to the elections, you ran for public office, which is something that I know has kind of crossed my mind a little bit. I don't know if I ever really will, but I guess the thought comes to me enough that maybe at some point I would do that. But you actually did it. So tell me about how that all transpired, and then get into some of the details of what you've learned from it.
Yeah. So it'll be, I think, 4 years now since I haven't been in news. I did I did radio news, and then I got forced out of a job in radio, and then I ended up working for TV for about a year after that. And after that point, I got to the point where, okay, I gotta go do something else. Public office has always been in the back of my mind as something ever since I started actually community college back in like 2001. And I didn't actually go to college until like late 2003 when I decided to pursue broadcasting, but it was always in the back of your mind. It's always been there. So after I got out of news, obviously you do a lot of networking, a lot of connections. You know what's going on in the community because you're engulfed in it. I mean, you are part of that community and everybody knows you. So after switching careers and started working for a trucking company, Schneider here, their home office here, after a couple of years, I decided, you know what, I want to run for city council. Here for Green Bay, which is kind of the show when it comes to political offices around here. So I ran actually in the fall last year into the winter here. They have spring elections here. So I ran for city council. I didn't get past the primary there because there were 4 great candidates there and a little bit more name recognition. But then months later, people approached me and said, hey, would you be interested in running for assembly? And I was taken back, and I was like, okay, well, I really got to think about this. So I want to do this 2 times in a year to run for public office. Mm-hmm. So I ended up, filing for papers to run after the nomination opened up to run for office. So I ran. I've always voted Democrat in my life, but I've never tried to play party politics. Being from a news background. You always try to be objective and pragmatic in how you think about stuff, and you look at the facts, and you want to make sure that people know as much as they can. And that's still how I approach politics today. But I definitely have always voted Democratic in my life. So I ended up becoming the Democrat in the race. Unfortunately, I did lose in November 2018 there to a fellow Republican who had already held the seat for a couple terms, but still involved with politics here locally, and still going strong with that.
Do you then see this continuing in future elections, going either back for that one of those previous positions you went for, or something else?
We'll wait and see. I mean, I've got 2 losses under my belt now, so that don't always look good. But I also really think, one thing I've really learned is that democracy goes beyond the ballot. Since Trump was elected, I got involved right away I didn't know if I wanted, I come back to that news thing where you're trying to be objective about things. I didn't know if I wanted to play, identity politics. So I got involved with a local organization here called Citizen Action, Northeast Wisconsin. And they were starting a concept called like an organizing cooperative that we started. And basically we would have an organizer who works full time in the area, and we would pay like monthly dues. and to help pay her salary, because there's a lot of groups that were organizing and forming after Trump's election here with Indivisible, Our Revolution, a lot of grassroots groups that, were obviously upset about stuff. But they, I really wanted to focus on issues and raising and be an advocate for issues, because there is a lot that we have more in common with each other than that divides us. And that's one thing I've really found. And so I started working with the organization there, sat on their steering committee, was their communications person for Citizen Action Northeast Wisconsin. And that's where I really kind of started dealing with organizing and politics. And I did that for about a year until I decided, okay, I think I'm going to run for office now, and ran for city council and then later for state assembly later in that summer. And that's kind of where I'm at right now. So, and I'm continuing to be more involved now probably with the party, because I understand the importance of actually electing people. And electing the right people. I think there's a lot of people that shouldn't be in office because I think I don't think they have the best interests of family and working families in mind.
Having worked that closely to it and been that close to it now, do you think some of these people enter it kind of like you do, and then just the system changes them over time? Or do you see people that are entering it for very self-motivating goals and not doing it for any sort of the public good?
I think you have both, and I think that judgment of character and that person will come out. You do see that over time. I think there's a lot of people that aren't operating always on principle, and I did start to see how where people don't understand that identity politics I keep hearing about. People don't think they're left or right, and I'm kind of in the middle, and they don't want to be this way or that way. But there are people that will seek the office versus people wanting to help their community. I think I was probably a little bit more in the vein of helping the community, but honestly, you do have to be slightly narcissistic to run for public office. I mean, you're putting yourself out there and you're talking with people and you're trying to you're asking people for the opportunity to serve them. So there is some self-interest in that and self-gratification, but I think in how they approach things, making themselves available to constituents, listening, what they propose for bills, who their donors are to their campaigns, you start to see who is actually just doing it because it's a political job and a title and something that they can esteem for, or people who actually want to dig down deep and actually help people and actually propose legislation and programs that actually will help people in that sense.
You mentioned or referred to having to be somewhat of a narcissist. So I'm not saying you are, but did you feel that as you went up to people, whether it was door to door or meeting people wherever you did, just, hey, random person, I am so important that you should go to this place on this day and vote for me, even though you're meeting me right now? And how do you express yourself in that way and do it without acting or feeling like a narcissist? Because I don't see that you are that, and that's one hesitation I'd have about anything where I continue to put myself out there. Like, I hadn't really put myself out there in a while than doing this podcast. Like, why should I have a podcast? I don't know what makes me so good. I don't know, but I think putting yourself out there in these different ways can make some people feel kind of weird about it.
Yeah, and you will definitely have those types of people right off the bat. And I tell you this much, the most rewarding thing of running for office is knocking doors and talking with people and listening to people. That's the biggest thing, the most important thing for running for office, and making that connection with people. You can see through the BS from some people, but I think people are looking for honesty and people that have a good heart, and I think you do see that. Where you start to don't see that is when you have, I think that's where we get into this whole thing of, good people and bad people. I think there's both on both sides, and we still have a two-party system here, but you definitely tend to see more Republicans going for big money and not always listening to the actual people that they're running to represent, versus I think Democratic candidates are a little bit more focused on their community and grassroots and making sure that they have an organizing where they're more people powered. versus more money powered. Here, just locally, we just saw that in a mayor race. You have a nonpartisan race, and you now have the Republican-backed candidate and the Democratic candidate won the primary to move on to advance to the general election. And you saw the importance of that backing, because that also comes with organizing power and people that have already taken that step, saying that it's hard to make that jump from just being a regular family person where I just go to I have a family, I've got stuff going all day long, and the only thing I do for politics is I go to the ballot and I vote, and then I leave, and then I complain the rest of the year until the next time we have election. And then we start getting in this vicious cycle of politicians don't represent us, and they're only out for themselves and stuff like that. Then that's where I've learned that democracy goes beyond the ballot. You need to organize. You need to have people that are involved, that are involved, and see the importance of those issues and the importance of advocating for change and for a different direction. Here in Wisconsin, nonpartisan redistricting reform is a big thing. 80% of the people nearly agree that politicians should not be drawing their own district boundaries. But you clearly see two sides that have completely different issues on that, because one benefits from politicians now trying their own maps, and one side where they don't have the right of speech anymore to elect people to represent their views. So door knocking is the most important thing for any person getting out there. And being narcissistic, I guess, I mean, it's a slight there. I think we're always into self-promotion and self-interest because we're always looking for a pat on the back, and whether we do that for ourselves or get it from other people. But I think it's always an element there. But I think as long as you have those honest conversations with people and talk and listen to people, I think you can get past that part of people are just politicians. You're just a politician. I don't care what you think or do or stuff. Very long answer there, but.
Yeah. Did you, in this process, whether with the city council or the state assembly, and the state assembly, is that like the state house?
It's the lower house, like the House of Representatives. Okay. So you've got like the Senate, and then the assembly here in Wisconsin is called the assembly, or it would be like the House of Representatives in Minnesota. So as you were going through that process and meeting the people, is there a story, someone that you met that really jumps out that made you feel like, yes, I'm doing the right thing. I gotta fight for this type of a person? Are there stories that emerged to you in that time? Obviously, the two biggest things on us locally here in Wisconsin was education and healthcare. Those are the two biggest things. And another thing that I really campaigned on was childcare, because I had 3 kids, and childcare is basically a mortgage if you've got kids these days. So I think we need to make sure that we're focusing on like pocketbook issues. But biggest thing as always is education. Here in Wisconsin, particularly with Act 10, if you're familiar with that story, where teachers basically just got their pay cuts and benefits cut by almost 10% on average. I'd be upset too if you took a big pay cut in that. But education and investing in great public schools was the biggest thing that was really a focus of a lot of people at the doors that I was speaking with. They knew the importance of having great education for their kids and that opportunity to move up in life and to become something. And that was the biggest thing. Let's move away from politics a little bit here, and if we come back into it, that's fine. I guess I'm also curious. I've been to Green Bay a number of times. I've been to a few Packers-Vikings games there. You're not from there, and living there, how long does it take before you're somehow like engulfed into the culture that is Green Bay? Are you a Packers fan now, for instance? I'm a Packers fan and a Vikings fan. It's hard to be one or the other, but I've always admired the Packers because of what they are. As an organization, they're not owned by some rich guy. They're owned by the people. Now, you know how you look at that, but they have done tremendous things here in Green Bay when it comes to investing in the community, being involved with every aspect of the community, putting up parks, doing school events. They've got this brand new development called Titletown right now, which is all just free parks and a giant and a football field that's lit up. And that is spurred investment. So they've invested in their community here, and Lambeau Field is just historic in a sense. So I've always admired what the Packers are, because it's a pretty much a nonprofit, publicly owned football team. You'll never see that ever again. You'll never see that. Mm-hmm. That would never be something that would fly now. So, but the community here is this is the third media market here. We're a community of about probably 200,000 people in the area here, about 100,000 in Green Bay. Probably more than that, actually. But this community, it's large enough, but also small enough. It's kind of that Goldilocks, when it comes to communities, where you don't have big, tall buildings and city life or traffic for that matter. But yet you've got great jobs and great opportunities to, for a good paying job and a good life. And you don't have to make a ton of money to live in some big fancy house. It's just people are all doing well here. And that's what this community, I think, is really, really about. It's just very involved. We all know each other and stuff like that. But at the same time, you still get that, big city a little bit.
And you grew up in Minnesota, I believe. Where?
I grew up in Maplewood, South Maplewood, so a suburb of St. Paul.
So you would say Green Bay compares a little to that, or not really at all?
Oh, no, not to St. Paul or even in Maplewood there, because I think you're still looking at two different things. But Green Bay is very similar to like St. Cloud.
Okay.
In that sense. Maybe a little bit more developed, but it's just like a step up from like St. Cloud when it comes to mediocre, like a city level of population and the suburban areas around it. I think it's just larger, just a little bit larger than that. But that's kind of the feeling that you kind of get from Green Bay versus like St. Cloud, Minnesota. So I kind of moved from one city to the same city.
You had mentioned just prior to us starting the recording that you had also been bouncing around the idea of a podcast. If you're willing to get into that, I'm curious, what would be your motivation to do what I've been doing here? And I guess maybe it comes from us being past radio guys. But what's your reasoning? Well,
obviously, I'm a huge fan of public radio. It was never something that I was ever able to get into for public radio. I worked for mostly conservative talk radio stations, and I was the local news anchor and reporter for those. But I listened to public radio my entire life, so it's ingrained in me, and that extended into podcasts. So I listen to a ton of podcasts throughout the day. I'll switch between a radio program, for a couple hours here, switch to a podcast, then go back to a radio program, and then maybe another podcast. So podcasts are everything about me. The podcast that I'm pursuing at doing, it would be very something for Northeast Wisconsin here that'll tackle both the local issues here in our communities, but also statewide issues as well. I really don't want to focus a lot on national politics because there's plenty of podcasts for that, but there isn't one that's local. So that makes it obviously a little bit harder. But basically, I want to make sure that I want to see if I can have like a panel of guests come on and talk about, some statewide stories and some local stories, and then have an interview with somebody and have it be informational, whether we're talking about some political things or stuff just in the community. I just want to make sure that, because I think there's a great media market here for when it comes to TV and radio and papers as well. But I still think they're missing stuff that I think is important. And the media mediums are changing right now, and it's hard to be in news, to be paying. I mean, I think journalism is definitely dying. And I think this is an opportunity, or maybe a new type of way of kind of still bringing that community journalism to people. Obviously, this will be a little bit more on the progressive side of things. But that's kind of the focus of what I'm kind of looking at for podcasting. And some of the challenges I'm running into is, I'm a former radio guy, but I also DJ'd on the side for decades. So, audio technical stuff is already all ingrained. I could fire up right now and start doing a podcast, but it's not about just doing a podcast. It's actually doing something of quality and something that will bring a new perspective and maybe some new insight for people. And that's kind of what I'm kind of hoping to do.
And I'd imagine that most of the people that are listening to us right now are already podcast listeners, and I think that's kind of the slow transition. You can pick up the people that already listen to podcasts, give you a try first. It's the people that maybe we're not even talking to right now, the people that have never listened to a podcast. I'm meeting people that don't know what a podcast is, and I guess that's understandable because we can't all know everything, but I forget that I've been listening to podcasts for years, and other people that's not a part of the routine. Maybe it never will be. I've just learned that it's been, until something new comes along, it is the best way to consume information because it's so easy to continue doing all the other things that you want to do in your day and not forced to be distracted the same way you would be if, say, if you're watching TV, you kind of have to like stop and sit down and stare at a screen, or even if you're looking at things on your phone and scrolling, that takes you away from everything else. But you can listen to a podcast while you're driving or while you're cooking a meal or while you're getting ready in the morning, whatever. It's so available to still accomplish other things you need to accomplish and yet consume information that interests you.
Yeah. And, that's a good thing and also a bad thing, the way I look at it. Because podcasts are, they're single serving. They can be very niche. But at the same time, they meet that on demand, which is what people require. People live busy lives. I can't watch Game of Thrones every time it comes on a Sunday night or something like that. Or, back in the old days, you'd watch Full House and The Golden Girls and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you made time for that. You don't have that anymore. There's too many cable cutters, so people, I haven't had cable for years because I don't have time to watch TV. Why do I have it? And that's what I think podcasts are getting into is it's on-demand programming. But at the same time, it also feeds into that narrative of people are in their own bubbles and they're not seeking thoughts and opinions that challenge their own line of thinking. And I think that's what we're getting away from, is that we're getting too much into these bubbles and people don't want, they become cognitive dissidents, where anything that comes at them that might be different from their views, they don't want to accept it. And I think podcasting, that's where the dangers of that gets a little bit, where you don't have that diversity of thought because you keep on feeding into that niche that podcasting can allow.
I can definitely see that. I think in my podcast listening, there's some shows that I listen to every time, and then there's a handful of others that I'll pop in at from time to time just to see what they have. And I'm always open to trying something new, but I do see what you're saying, that it probably still tends to stay within a certain bubble. One thing I try to do with mine so far is, I think my variety of guests and their backgrounds and what we have to talk about is very wide-ranging. I haven't really gotten into politics a whole lot so far. It'll certainly come with time. I think it's kind of difficult to avoid as I talk to different people and their passions and interests. But the other thing is, and we'll get to this in a little bit, with my Being Wrong segment, one of the real motivations is everyone can look back at their life and think about what they wish they had done differently. And every once in a while, I think someone's going to look at something and say, yep, I was wrong about this. Meanwhile, person listening will be currently doing this or will have looked at that a totally different way. And I think it at least brings up the possibility that someone is going to have what they thought was the best or right thing to do be challenged by someone else, and then it forces an opportunity to maybe learn something or be at least open yourself up to possible changes in your life. And that's been one of the goals, because so many people in my life have come through and influenced me with their ideas. And I love it. I love that someone else has some other idea on something, and it can help me to be a better or different person possibly. And I want to keep passing that around, because I think that's one of the greatest gifts of life, is this new information from people that maybe when you least expect it, someone's figured something out before you. This is the person you want to talk to or listen to.
Yeah. And that's like I said, it's for me, everything always comes back down to politics but communication is a two-way street, but not everybody always seems, the same messages the same way. And that's always the difficult thing, is making sure that you're at least being empathetic towards people. I don't think you see a lot of that. You may recognize the problem and see it, but you don't actually put yourself in that person's shoes. But yeah.
So let's swing back into the politics then for a moment, because another question came to my mind. When you were running for, let's say, state assembly as a progressive, as the Democrat on the ballot, when you would come across a conservative or someone that would suggest to you that they vote Republican, were you able to still have conversations that you found were constructive that maybe would have brought you two both closer to the middle?
Yeah. I mean, it was a rarity when you automatically came up to somebody who was, I'm a Republican and that's all I do. Because when you're getting out the vote and you're getting people out to vote for you, you're going to, and this is the problem with politics these days too, is who you're targeting as a voter. And this is stuff that I want to explore even on my own podcast, is that, I know that these people vote Republican because we've identified them as Republican. And then you do that through years of knocking on their door, taking a survey. Every campaign you're collecting data like, oh, this person just moved in and they're conservative, and that's what their name is then. So you don't go to their door. You wouldn't at all. So in your campaign, you're going to target people that might be swing voters. And the people that are on the far left that that are tried and true Democrats, and they're going to vote Democratic every single time, you're not going to talk to them because you've got the independents that you want to target the most. So I did come across those people where they may be a regular voter, but they've never been visited. So that's where we come into play, where I, as a candidate, will obviously knock on a door, say, hey, how's it going? And people automatically ask, what are you, Democrat, Republican? People are not. They already automatically have closed off. No matter what you say after that point is going to change their mindset. And the conversation will you'll never be able to change that person. But you do reach out you do find those people that don't have those identity politics and can go beyond that. And that's where you have a conversation when it comes to like guns or education. And that's where I came back to, is that there is so much more that we have in common than is different about us. Everyone understands that healthcare is expensive and we need to do something about it. How we do it, and we need to have action on that. Education is important. We want to make sure that we're making those education and those investments. Wow, we don't want to be driving on bad roads. These are in general agreements on how you do that. And it's hard to gauge that opinion with public polls and local, but just having an honest conversation with the people understand where you're coming from. If you bring some sort of, if you're educated on the topic. I always thought I was educated on stuff, and that's where I think I could have much more honest conversations. But at the same time, you cannot have a conversation with somebody for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, because that is then now 15 more people you did not visit on your walk list. It is a very short time span to talk with those people and to make that connection. And you have an elevator pitch every single time you go to a door, and it gets repetitive. There might be some insight on maybe like what type of magazine they might get in their house. And so you could maybe hit from a environmental angle or something like that, or a conservation angle, or that they're identified as a teacher. So you hit it from an education angle. So you do have those insights, but that's kind of where door knocking comes into play, and meeting those people kind of in the middle when it comes to left or right kind of thing.
I see that as one of the biggest challenges of what you were and may continue to try to accomplish, is trying to get to know. You can't get to know someone that quickly. To get anyone to even think that they like you enough that quickly. That's one thing I like about, say, this podcasting platform is, certainly some of the people that listen to this show already know me to different degrees, and it's possible there's then some other people that have found it that listen to it that don't know me, but I guess will get to know me through this. That long form, it takes a while to really, I think, truly like someone. You can get a good vibe from someone and think, yeah, maybe I like this person, but you can't. Someone that met you for a minute or two when you knocked on their door, they might get a good vibe from you, but if they can't really say whether they like you or not, I mean, I think that would be, we can't decide that quickly. so you can make a good impression, but to really know someone and either know, yeah, this is someone I really believe will get behind the right interest, whether or not they're Democrat or Republican, I really don't care. I don't necessarily vote for the same party every time. And I used to, and now I really want to vote on the person as long as I think that they have people's interests in mind. I'm very much okay with voting for anybody as long as I really think they care about people, and they at least on certain issues they're not one way or the other. I just don't know if people always care about what the person thinks. I think it's so much on what their platform is, and nothing to do with the person behind the platform.
Yeah, and it's not. I hate platforms. I hate it. If you have a bad road in your neighborhood and you want to run for city council and change that, then you run on that issue. But then you do get questions. Sometimes, but you just got to keep fighting for those single issues that are important to you. And it may not always be just running for office. There are other ways. Like I said, democracy goes beyond the ballot. Getting involved in when that some committee meeting's coming up, reaching out to your elected official and writing them a letter or an email or shooting them out on Facebook saying, hey, I got this issue, come talk to me. And, I want to take a look at it. So it's, yeah, we always put up our horse blinders right away when we talk about stuff with people these days. And those people, you're not, I'll just move right along because I know I'm not going to change their mind. But there, I might be able to get to 2 or 3 people that haven't made up their minds yet, and have a feeling that something's not right in the country and they're going to vote this way or that way. I mean, there are those swing voters. I've never been one of them, but at the same time, I always try to keep an open mind because I have a lot of conservative friends. And what we talk about, it is unbelievable what we have in common sometimes. But I think what always tears us apart is the cultural issues.
Let's, at this time, if you're ready, Terry, let's get into my being wrong segment. Have you had a few moments, let some ideas come to mind of what you can say now that you used to do wrong or think wrong about? Terry Lee, what were you wrong about?
I guess maybe money. I think even though I was always raised well on money and how to, stuff like that, I think it was the money of paying bills, making what you make, because when I was younger, I ran into financial troubles, and some of those things still linger with me today. But I think the importance of finance and understanding that and all angles of money when it comes to checking, credit cards, having a home mortgage, all of that stuff on how it involves your life. I think I was really wrong at that when I was young, and you're wiser now as you get older, obviously, experience and knowledge and living through it. But I think just my understanding of finances and money, I think, has changed radically because everything costs money, and you need to be smart about it and budgeting and stuff like that. So that's kind of where I guess I come from a little bit, if you want to probe that or not. Yeah,
let's get into more details on that. And I've thought about this before. One of the biggest differences in people's potential success is what they're taught about money and credit and investing and all these different areas, where some people get way ahead and some people are left really struggling. And it's a few good ideas and practices put in at a young age that I think make all the difference. Yes, we can all make more or less money in a given year, but a lot of it is how do we use the money that we have? Is it always in smart, important ways? Is some of it kind of for fun and some of it just completely foolishly? And I really think there's a difference in that, in the way people approach their lives. So I want to get to a better understanding of what you used to thought was a good idea in terms of money and what now you just you don't do.
I think when you're young, you have that expendable cash, so you're not making those investments in like a house or saving up for a great car, reliable transportation. That expendable income you might have, you're going out and partying and stuff like that when you're does. But I was never really like that. I was always a workaholic. So as much as I worked, I've always had multiple jobs. I don't know why. I think I get it from my grandfather. He's always been a busy bee. You're always got to be doing something, even in your downtime. You got some hobby, you got some interest or something like that. I'm still that way. But I've always worked more than one job at one time. I'm always doing something I mean, I've been DJing on the side, for decades, since like 1999. I go through dribs and drabs of it, but yeah, when it comes to money, it's about your wants and your needs, and setting a budget, setting your goals. What do you want from life? Instilling those. I mean, I don't think that education was there for me when I was young, even at school. My mom was always about, you got to save your money, you got to do that, but as soon as you got, money at 12 years old because you work some summer job or something like that, your eyes get big and you want to go buy that CD player, or something like that. So I've always been a materialistic kind of guy. Myself, I'm still a renter now. And I'm just looking at buying my first home. And I hope to have that goal by the time I'm 40. I've never owned my own home, and that's partially because of, making enough money, paying your bills, and doing stuff like that. So that is a goal that I hope to accomplish in the next year here. And
you have 3 children, which I'm sure throws a wrench into a lot of the financial goals, when just keeping them healthy and alive and happy is
that's always my main focus.
Well, Terry Lee, thank you so much for accommodating this on a short schedule, and your hair looks good. I'm sure your teeth will look great soon as well.
I appreciate it, Curt. It was fabulous to talk with you, man, and thank you for the opportunity here, and I hope everything is good in your life.
It is going very well. Thank you, Terry.
Thanks, Curt. Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to People I Know Show. Links are in the show notes for the People I Know Show Facebook and Instagram accounts. Please, if you can, take a few moments to rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you might be listening. And if you like the show, please encourage someone new to listen, or just share your favorite episode on social media. And feel free always to email your feedback directly to me, Curt Karstensen, by using the email address peopleiknowshow@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.